meaning to play in Stars in Time for a long, long time, but one thing always held me back. Well, technically two, if you count the undiagnosed ADHD. But my true nemesis was choice paralysis. You see, In Stars in Time has a prequel game called Start Again, or more accurately, Start Again, Start Again, Start Again, a prologue. Many players probably went straight to the main game, but I had this itch in the back of my mind that the prologue was an important part of the experience, and so I sat on my hands, unable to decide. But, as you can probably guess by the title, I eventually chose Start Again as my starting point, all because of one magical thing. Roleplay! Yes, really. You see, in one of my pan-fandom roleplays, someone brought in Siffrin specifically from Start Again. This intrigued me. It felt significant to choose the prologue as the canon point. So, one Steam sale later, I booted up Twitch to stream a blind playthrough of the prologue. And, having completed both Start Again and In Stars in Time, I can now confidently say that people are sleeping on this prologue. That, by starting with it, it fundamentally changed my In Stars in Time experience. So, while I chip away at more ambitious video scripts, let me tell you about why this prologue frickin' slaps. It might seem antithetical to start a prologue at the end, but that's exactly what Start Again does. You see flashes of the party's journey through what looks like a spooky castle, cutting to gorgeous cutscene graphics. The party lies down on the ground, save for the protagonist Siffrin. Their face darkened and bloody, they stare upon a figure in silhouette. You see a close-up of them, despair in their one visible eye. But at the sound of their friends' voices, they snap back into smiling, clean and pristine. Time is rewound. Their deaths were undone, and they stand in the middle of that very same castle. All but Siffrin remain clueless of their deaths, the latest deaths of many. Again and again, they've repeated this futile quest. Again and again, they've died. We, the players, begin on the tail end of that latest failure, with Siffrin's inner monologue conveying how they've seen it all before. This right here is a striking hook. No character introductions, minimal exposition. You're thrown right into the middle of this story and expected to pick up the pieces as you go. It's a bold direction for a prologue, but one that captivated me immediately. So engrossed was I that I saw this floaty tear thing, touched it, and... whoops! First death of the run, but an important lesson, and placed early enough that I didn't lose much progress. It also established the tears' role in-universe, freezing all who touched them in time. This gets elaborated on a bit later, with one of the first obstacles in the game. On my second run, I was more cautious, and the game rewarded me with a lovely set of cutscene panels where the researcher threw a rock to demonstrate the tears' time-stopping power. The simple sequence shows the level of care that elevates this simple introduction. Just like the initial scene, the art direction shows so much passion and character. While the story begins in medias res, the lack of grounding context only heightened my interest. Moreover, as you progress through the House of Change, as you soon learn it's called, a few things stick out. First, there's Siffrin's frustration with hearing their friends repeat the same things, utterly clueless that they've said it before, juxtaposed with Siffrin's desire to maintain the facade and follow the script. But if you look at the pause menu or even the first combat tutorial, something else sticks out: the lack of character names. Your party members are the housemaiden, the fighter, the researcher, and the kid. Tropes. Roles. Though it's not immediately stated, this excellently conveys the mental toll the time loops have taken on Siffrin. They've gone through this so many times that they can't remember their friends' names. The dialogue even avoids mentioning their names, so it might not immediately register that they haven't been used at all. The first loop also features other little touches that made my experience really engrossing, like the way that Siffrin forgets to make a pun, or their mental breakdown in the bathroom being sidetracked by the idea of closing their ears. Interactions with objects throughout the house also introduce world-building very casually, from the island no one remembers to the nature of the House of Change, craft, and the fate of being frozen in time. Oh, and crabs. Offensive, sacrilegious, inevitable. Start Again teases just enough world building while leaving the big picture incomplete. My desire to know more propelled me forward to the battle with the king, and the party members' confidence utterly clashed with Siffrin's sense of inevitability. His inner monologue made it clear that this was a battle they had lost and would lose again. Yet when I got to the king, I tried anyway. His health bar barely chipped away, his attacks dealt massive damage, and still I tried, until all too suddenly it ended, and I was left with a simple question. How would Siffrin like to die? In Stars in Blood, or in Tears in Time? Then time looped again. Throughout the first loop, I was engrossed by the artistic decisions at play. The black and white art style combined with the cute and cartoonish character designs already appealed on their own, but even in this rougher, earlier version of this journey, there was a lot to like. From the tiny details like the ticking clock sounds in the background music, or the deliberate lack of animation frames on all but one torch, to the wild and abstract enemy designs, Start Again has a strong identity that gets carried on through In Stars in Time and refined further. In the first tutorial, I remember being both amused and intrigued at seeing an elemental system being boiled down to just rock, paper, scissors, but the enemy designs really help inform this system, and it's woven into the world building via the in-universe magic and craft system. Enemies will unveil their craft type via their hands. This simplifies hunting for weaknesses, but also requires players to pay attention to how they plan out their turns. Some characters, like Siffrin and the Fighter, have skills that can pass on their turns to other party members. Regular attacks make your turns come faster as well. Start Again lacks the jackpot system in Stars in Time, and battle portraits are more static, save for status ailments. The enemies lack a hit animation, but do pulse with a sort of squash and stretch effect to give them the feeling that they're breathing. Even still, the design work combined with the eerie and almost discordant battle music really keeps things immersive. The character cut-ins for special attacks add a visual flair reminiscent of the Persona series as well. Battles here are slower than in Stars in Time. It's like a rough draft, but there is a strong foundation. One might even argue that the roughness and tedium of the experience is very intentional. If you die and start again, you start over from the very beginning of the prologue. You can't choose specific checkpoints to pick up after you fail. There are few to no hints on what to do, leaving players to connect the dots from inferences in Siffrin's inner monologue or experiment until they reach a different outcome. While this may be less fun than in Stars in Time, it does lead to a very immersive experience. You feel the weight of the experience alongside Siffrin, the struggle and the grind. In Stars in Time takes what works here and simply polishes it. The party member portraits now have idle animations. They react when hit, or with certain status effects. Enemies have hit animations too. The jackpot system adds further strategy to the combat. Isat offers generous checkpoints and the ability to loop forward and backwards in time, and you're given far more hints and guidance on how to progress. But that's another reason I think it's worth starting with the prologue, so you can really watch the artistic evolution and feel the quality of life improvements in the gameplay. Not to mention there are narrative reasons behind these improvements, which I'll touch upon in a bit. I didn't notice until revisiting the prologue after finishing in Stars in Time, but many of the visuals differ between games. The overworld sprites for the party, the tileset for the house, and even some of the dialogue portraits have seen visual overhauls between releases. The layout of the house also differs, as well as how you ultimately progress to the king. So while some of the dialogue may be familiar upon playing in Stars in Time, other things may be slightly off. The muscle memory you build in Start Again may ever so slightly betray you, which can further enhance the experience. The prologue also teases at greater mysteries that become pivotal to Isat's lore, such as the mysterious island north of Vogard that no one can quite remember, an island that no one dares speak the name of, as it's far too painful. It's just enough to make one wonder, while leaving many mysteries for later. Almost everything is conveyed through delightful character interactions as opposed to dry lore dumps. This is something that carries over into Isat and is further fleshed out and extrapolated. Even if you play Start Again first, there are still many surprises to come. I certainly didn't expect a rock to come crashing down in Stars in Time, for instance. Many of the rooms are also different in terms of NPCs and object placements, so it's really cool to see how the world grew and evolved. Playing the games in order creates some lovely momentum, but as I said, there are narrative reasons I believe it's better to start with the prologue. One thing Start Again shares in common within Stars in Time is a sense of frustration and futility that comes with each failed loop. Losing to the king sets you back to the start. Only Siffrin carries their level, the others revert back to where they began. The party members repeat the same lines, only now you see through Siffrin's eyes just how familiar it all is. Like Siffrin, you have to decide whether to play along, listen, and show encouragement to everyone, or get to the point by skipping the tutorial, skipping certain interactions, and hurrying toward puzzle solutions to get back to a battle you'll probably lose again. Unlike in Isat, there is no option to zone out during scenes. You can't call for help. There are no secrets hidden within the house to make your battle with the king easier. Siffrin, stuck in a nihilistic mindset, will insist on going the same familiar path to the same familiar fate. So how do you break this cycle of death? Do you keep acting perfectly in hopes of being nice enough will make a difference? Or do you cave into your despair because it doesn't matter what you say or how you act? Time will just rewind. Nothing matters. If this premise is intriguing enough for you, I highly recommend trying Start Again yourself. From here on, I'll be going into spoilers for the true ending of Start Again, and further spoilers in Stars in Time. My second loop ended with failure again. I wanted to be kind to the party still, but my patience was thinning. I couldn't figure out what to do, so I started acting odd. Skipping explanations, going straight for the puzzle solutions, not making jokes, staying silent during conversations. It very much reflected the mindset of a player playing a game and having to redo segments they'd seen before because they'd failed a difficult fight, or forgotten to save. So much progress lost. Lines losing their impact after seeing them enough times. Just like Siffrin, who refused to tell their friends for fear of what it would do to them, who would try to avoid certain objects and interactions when he remembered that they'd upset the party before. Bathroom trips yielded further mental spiraling. Even though I'd only been with Siffrin for a few loops at this point, I could feel the weight of their hundreds, if not thousands, of failures. The frustration carried through to battles, where Siffrin's just attack command not only dealt absurd damage, but featured a deeply pissed-off portrait that so excellently captured the feelings of both player and protagonist. But while I was frustrated at the two subsequent defeats, I was equally frustrated at their insistence not to talk to their friends, so I chose to make them act weird, in the hopes that their friends might notice. In the end, this paid dividends. The culminations of these choices, of skipping to keys and crests and acting strange, hits in one of the hallways leading up to the king. The party, fed up with Siffrin's strange behavior, questions if he's even okay. They notice how they've been far too prepared, how there's no way it could be a coincidence. The kid offers Siffrin a snack, but Siffrin's more focused on the texture of the candy wrapper than their own self-care. But also, this is something new. As the scene progresses and the party both confronts and comforts Siffrin, once again, it's all new to them, just as it's new to us. Their portraits finally show more expression than a forced smile. They emote, they react. We get beautiful cutscene graphics, such as the housemaiden holding Siffrin's tired face, or the fighter holding their hands. Everyone does their best to reaffirm their bond with Siffrin, and remind him that he can talk to them, that they love him. That love carries into the Battle of King, empowering the entire party. That was the first sign that something had changed, that there was hope, even if Siffrin couldn't see it yet. The fight with the king on the true ending path was long and arduous, but throughout the fight we get close-ups of Siffrin and peeks at their thoughts. Finally, we get direct acknowledgement that they can't remember their friends' names. They try in vain, berating themselves for remembering puzzles, important objects, and other aspects of the journey while objectifying and dehumanizing the friends that have stuck with them throughout their quest. But it's less painful that way, isn't it? When you hear the same lines, experience death hundreds, if not thousands of times, isn't it better to distance them from the memories of the friends you cherish? It's an excellent glimpse into Siffrin's mindset, and all the sweeter when he accepts death, only for his friends to intercept and shield him. One by one the names come flooding back, as the tide of battle shifts. The change in music, the gorgeous cutscene graphics, all of it hit hard after losing to the king before. The expressions, the dynamic framing, and the sheer emotion and how it cuts through to Siffrin's core are all immaculate. It's so hopeful, so genuine, and with Mirabelle empowering him, Siffrin lands the final blow. And the king is gone. They've all won, which begs a very important question. Why is this a prologue? I remember wondering what this meant for In Stars in Time. Was the king just a precursor to a larger story? But I knew In Stars in Time was a game about time leaps, so there had to be more to it. Didn't quite hit me then, when the party members celebrated their victory and spoke of returning to their ordinary lives. Returning to their homes. And of course, it's at that precise moment that everything snaps. Abruptly, and with little fanfare, time leaps back to before the party even braved the house. Siffrin lies alone in a field, until Mirabelle finds him. Though she speaks, Siffrin is stone silent. They're to fight the king tomorrow. The king they just defeated. Everything was undone. Despite everything, Siffrin is still trapped. By that point, I was absolutely hooked. How would this carry over into the main game? It was such an immense burden to be on the cusp of victory, then have it torn away. Yet, In Stars in Time doesn't begin with Siffrin burdened by a stolen victory. The Siffrin we see is more hopeful, more optimistic, and still remembers their friends' names. How strange. It's impossible to discuss the full impact of Start Again without delving into heavy spoilers for In Stars in Time. What I can say before we hit the spoilers is that playing In Stars in Time fully unspoiled after Start Again creates such a fascinating mystery. The opening cutscene shows Siffrin without their hat, tearful as a star manifests before him. He reaches out to the star, whispers to it, eats it, and then wakes up. But it's odd, isn't it? It seems like the prologue didn't even happen, but it's a prologue. Prologues come before the story, and this is Act 1. It's Act 1, and when Siffrin gets crushed by a rock, they loop back, but they act like they've never looped back before. And then they meet Loop, who knows all about the time loops, despite being completely absent from the prologue. Where was Loop this whole time? What gives? It's interesting because Start Again shows you the culmination of time loops on Siffrin's psyche, yet In Stars in Time shows you the progression from start to finish. You're along for the ride, but if you did play the prologue, it adds this layer of tension to see Siffrin in such a state. You know it can't last. You know that sooner or later, they have to collapse under the weight of the futility of their journey. But seriously, what was up with the prologue? Why start at the end, and an ending that seemingly doesn't matter if Siffrin can't even remember? Why is Siffrin so careless in the house, to a point where a falling rock crushes them to death and... Wait, they're acting like they don't know about the time loops still, and what? Who's this star guy? They weren't in the prologue. That seems like a rather crucial character to omit. Something isn't right. I wish I could say that I was completely unspoiled for this. In truth, I was spoiled for one thing about In Stars in Time and its prologue before I even started either game. So, for the rest of this video, we're going all out on spoilers. This is your last warning to hop off this train before it leaves the station. You still here? Well, okay, let's just get to the point. I knew from the very beginning that there were two Siffrins. Ironically, this was also due to roleplay. The roleplay I mentioned before got an In Stars in Time Siffrin later, and while I steered clear of the spoiler-heavy threads between the two, the fact that they counted as different enough characters to play in a game that didn't allow duplicates only further piqued my interest. It was, ironically, another contributing factor to me starting with the prologue. So I went in without any real context. The name and the character Loop were still abstract to me. I'd seen the design, but that was it. Still, Loop is an interesting character, aren't they? They know so much about Siffrin, about their friends, about Vogard, and about the Loops. I didn't notice at first because it's subtle, but their eyes are slightly different colors. Siffrin even acknowledges this later. I got lucky in Act 3, and I got a rare event with the silver coin. Then I showed the silver coin to Loop, who had a strangely personal reaction to it, and to Siffrin's reaction. At one point, I outright guessed that Loop was Siffrin, which led Loop into a fit of hysterical laughter. By starting with the prologue, In Stars and Time presents an added mystery, or rather, it enhances the mystery that's already there. You're left with questions like, why doesn't Siffrin remember, and where did Loop come from? And as you progress through the story, you might start to connect the dots. After all, it's Loop who introduces new mechanics to isat, such as looping forward to different points in the house, keeping track of side quests, and all those delicious quality of life elements. So on one hand, there's the doylist explanation of isat being a more polished and developed version of the concepts expressed in Start Again, but then you get the lovely Watsonian edition of Loop to tie the game design and story together. Loop being the one to communicate via the tutorial text boxes really helps solidify this concept. In Start Again, Siffrin didn't have a loop. Here, Siffrin does, making the journey just a little more comfortable and convenient. But that still doesn't fully explain Loop's deal. A book about witchcraft discusses making a copy of yourself. When I got there, I wondered if perhaps that was Loop's doing. If Loop was Siffrin from the prologue, then what if they wished for another version of themselves to ease the burden of the Loops and to be truly understood? This isn't quite what happened, but I was on the right track. Though spoiled in part, I can imagine an unspoiled player coming to similar conclusions, wondering, questioning. But Start Again does so much more as the story progresses. For instance, during Act 5, when Siffrin hits their absolute breaking point, they believe that if they deal the final blow on the king instead of Mirabelle, that will change everything and break the Loops. But if you played Start Again, you'll know that this is false. For some reason, Loop also doubts this, and if you consider Loop as the prologue Siffrin, it makes perfect sense because they already tried it. They landed the killing blow on the king, not Mirabelle. Loop's pained reaction to Bonnie's death at the end of Act 3 also stands out as foreshadowing. It's such a genuine response, a deviation from Loop's general aloofness. It's as if Loop truly cares for Bonnie. There's so much planting, so many breadcrumb hints that are even stronger with the prologue in mind. Without it, I think it's still possible to connect the dots and start to wonder about Loop's identity. With it, though, if you make the conclusion that Loop is a separate Siffrin, that the prologue Siffrin is a different Siffrin, then you already know them. You've seen the end result of their suffering, how their fleeting hope was stolen from them. And unlike isat Siffrin, who can still stay with their friends, try to make their lives better, and truly become a found family with them, Loop can only watch from afar. Because Loop doesn't leave the favor tree. Loop doesn't make themselves known to the others for the vast majority of the game. Loop is, whether they admit it or not, lonely. This has the added effect of making isat Siffrin's mental decline even more heartbreaking. As I said, you start with a much more confident Siffrin. Dying sucks, and dying to the king sucks even more, but they still have hope that they can find a solution. They and Loop have plans, like trying to find a spell that Mirabelle can use to protect everyone from the king's attack. The victory still ends in a time loop, but unlike the prologue, you get to see the head housemaiden. Not that it matters, everything still winds back. You can try to learn more about the king in hopes of reasoning with him. Loop is hesitant about this. When you consider the prologue, it makes perfect sense, because Loop died to the king thousands of times. Who's to say they hadn't tried it before? Even after Bonnie gets crushed to death, even after Siffrin unravels wildly in the aftermath of that death, clinging to witchcraft and the head housemaiden as reasons for the Loops, Loop remains passive. They try to steer Siffrin on the right path by suggesting that it's something to do with the encounter with the head housemaiden, and not her own doing, that keeps them trapped in the Loops. But imagine watching a version of yourself break down, just like you once did. Imagine trying to steer them on the right course, to find hope that if you can break the Loops, then maybe he can. But he keeps self-sabotaging. Maybe if they can get the king to say their country's name, something will change. It has to be someone else's wish keeping them trapped, if not the king's. Clearly, Mirabelle dealing the final blow is what's doing it, not anything to do with their own wishes and feelings. A really pivotal moment that shines in the aftermath of Start Again comes later into the game. Call Loop enough times throughout the adventure, and there's a 10% chance in Act 4 that Siffrin will have a mental breakdown where they start forgetting their friends' names. Sound familiar? It's Loop who reaches out to them, who carefully reminds Siffrin of everyone's name, of who they are, because they've been there before. They've grown to see their friends as mere shadows of the real people they were, just as isat Siffrin increasingly grows to see their adventure as a play, and everyone in it actors who must play their parts. Follow the script, say the line. When people act incorrectly, they're the problem, not Siffrin. In some respects, isat Siffrin's decline feels much more extreme than in Start Again. You spend more time with him, and you spend more time with the party, both in and out of the house. If you do the friend quests multiple times, the narration changes. Much like in Start Again, Siffrin starts having breakdowns in the bathroom. They disassociate more and more, start predicting what their friends will say, and poor Loop has to watch history repeat itself, only this time, they're an outsider. They aren't the one directly suffering, but in some ways, isn't that worse? To see a mirror image of yourself repeating your mistakes, or even doing worse ones. In Act 5, Siffrin is so fundamentally broken that they carry a threatening aura around. When they try to hurry through the friend quests, they end up hurting every one of their friends. Their lack of patience ruins everything. They even blow up at Loop, pushing them away just as they had with their friends, before foolishly taking on the house alone. Really, no wonder Loop finally takes a proactive role here, even if it's largely off-screen. They've been there, self-destructing, but found the faintest sliver of hope. It was stolen from them. Their life, their friends, everything. Facing the party had to be agonizing, but they did it, because they love their friends, and their friends love Siffrin, because, envious as they may be, they still care. And by helping the party, their efforts lead to the loops finally breaking. Siffrin has to confront his own fears of being left behind. Fears that we can put into context with the end of Start Again, and the very moment Loop's victory was snatched away from them. Loop is Siffrin. Siffrin feared being forgotten, being left behind, because Siffrin had nowhere to return to and no family besides the one they found on their quest. This is the genius of Start Again's abrupt ending. It's over so fast, you don't get to fully ruminate on why time looped again, all the way back to the start. Observant players may be able to connect the dots, especially if they progress through multiple successful loops in isat, but there are a lot of red herrings and misdirection at play between the King Quest, Wishcraft, and even the Head Housemaiden. When everything falls into place in Act 5, it hits like a truck, but the true cherry on top comes if you meet the conditions for what fans call the Two Hats ending, by getting the silver coin scene, the subsequent interaction with Loop, and backtracking to the favor tree during Act 6. At first, it seems no one remains beneath this shade of the favor tree. Siffrin briefly wonders if, perhaps, Loop ceased to be. However, if you fulfill the conditions for this ending, he'll find a silver coin where Loop used to sit. The same silver coin that he's carried throughout his own adventure. Everything falls into place, if it hadn't by now. Each little piece of foreshadowing comes together in this moment, where Siffrin calls out to Loop, then asks if he should have used their previous name. When Loop appears, Siffrin tosses their own silver coin at them. While Loop catches it, they're closed off, trying to shoo Siffrin away. It makes sense, though. Siffrin did everything they never could. He broke the loops. He beat the king. He overcame his own fears and insecurities that led to their shared wish. In this moment, Siffrin stands antithetical to the Siffrin of the prologue. Start Again always ends in tragedy, victory snatched away just as soon as it's reached. There is no secret route to avert this outcome, and the only other endings lead to death or stasis. Though, a part of Loop did hope that things could be different with this Siffrin, and they cared enough to help the party in Siffrin's time of need, the fact remains that Loop was a stranger to them. They had to interact with the phantoms of the people they once knew, but who are no longer the same. It's really no surprise then that Loop lashes out. We do at least get confirmation that Loop is the Siffrin of Start Again, but if you've never played the prologue, this won't hit the same way. By going in with the prologue first, I had seen firsthand what Loop had endured, giving their monologue far more gravitas. Up until this moment, I had wondered how Start Again Siffrin became Loop. Loop didn't write that diary about using Wishcraft to create a copy, so what happened? As it turns out, another wish. A wish for it all to be over, a wish to escape, a wish for someone to help them. And it's ironic, isn't it? The universe technically did fulfill their wish. Not only did it whisk Loop into another Siffrin's loops, but it gave that Siffrin help. Loop, who had asked for help, suddenly had to give it. They got to enjoy being on the sidelines, not having to endure the same struggle over and over, knowing that there was at least someone else enduring the loops besides them. It really does reframe both isat and the prologue. All those diegetic tutorials, all those opportunities isat Siffrin has that were absent in the prologue, and it makes Loop's behavior leading up to their fight so fascinating, because they try so hard to deny that they care, acting as though they can defeat Siffrin, take his life, and everything will be fine and dandy. It's one final bout of denial, because where before they could maintain their distance, seeing a Siffrin who triumphed wholly and completely holds up a mirror to their own mistakes and failings. It's not just that Siffrin won, it's the fact that Siffrin had it so much easier. It took far fewer loops to beat the king. He got to enjoy all these sentimental moments with the family that was stolen from Loop, and when Loop finally had to interact with them, they didn't recognize them. They treated Loop like a stranger. It could have been them! Why wasn't it them? The true beauty of starting my journey from the prologue culminates here. From lovely flourishes like Loop's attack cutting being the just attack pose to their own ability to loop back when they take too much damage, the fight carries so much atmosphere despite its lack of difficulty. We get to experience Loop's agony through their monologues and their sprites growing more and more unhinged with each phase of the battle. And who can blame them? Knowing what they suffered through, it's only natural that they'd feel so empty, so envious, and enraged. Yet regardless of whether you win or lose, this ending puts a lovely bow on Loop's journey from the prologue till now. After all, the key difference between isat Siffrin and Start Again Siffrin is Loop. Loop was there to understand Siffrin, to offer guidance, both sincere and snarky, and even just their company gave Siffrin a quiet reprieve. Even when Siffrin was on the verge of breaking, Loop went out of their way to rally the party to save his life. In a way, Loop became the unsung hero of this story. Even if they didn't directly defeat the king or directly confront their own wish, they still allowed another version of themselves to finally break the cycle. By placing Start Again in this context, isat serves as a happy and hopeful ending to both games' stories. Though Loop's fate is left ambiguous, there's hope that one day they'll return Siffrin's coin and accept the party's thanks. It's such a warm, lovely resolution that made me grateful that I started from the very beginning, as my journey felt truly complete. While I do consider Start Again an essential part of the In Stars in Time experience, I can understand why one might skip it. While isat is available on Steam and multiple consoles, Start Again is a PC-only release. For console players, this presents a layer of complications, and while the prologue is cheap on sale, not everyone is going to want to purchase it, and that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to share my own thoughts as someone who experienced both in their chronological order, and how it really made In Stars in Time shine so much brighter for me. If you'd like to see my full experience through both games, I have a playlist on my second channel that I'll link on the end screen and in the description. I'm trying to back up more of my Twitch playthroughs, but ADHD makes this more tedious than it ought to be. I also plan on streaming more games in the very near future, so if you'd like to stay up to date, follow the Twitch link in the description. I'm hoping to make 2026 a year for some solid long-term projects. I keep teasing the meta-narratives and gaming video and the Akechi analysis, but these will be my two big projects, in addition to some Deltarune videos when Chapter 5 drops. Maybe I'll do some smaller videos in between. I've just been extra busy taking care of two cute stray cats materialized in my garage. If you'd like to help support me while I tackle these ambitious projects, please consider pledging on my Patreon. I'll be posting updates and work-in-progress scripts, audio, and other goodies. Additionally, I'm thinking of doing some fun Patreon-exclusive commentaries on older theories and analysis videos. Though it's been busy for me, I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you for watching.